Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zeinab Badawi, in Rome. Migration, the euro, and of course Brexit are all testing the European Union like never before. And here in Italy, there's talk of another possible blow for the EU. If voters see a referendum on constitutional change later this year as a protest vote to bring down the centre-left government, then this could boost the anti-euro populists. My guest is Italy's Foreign Minister Paolo Gentiloni. Are Italians becoming disillusioned with the EU project? Foreign Minister Paolo Gentiloni, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Could Italy deliver the next big blow for the European Union?
No, I don't think so.
Really?
For sure.
You might lose the constitutional referendum in October. Opinion polls show that it's running pretty neck and neck in both camps.
Well, I'm rather confident we will win the referendum, but in any case, it's not a referendum about EU or about the government. It's a referendum about constitutional reforms. A little bit complicated to explain for a non-Italian, but
I mean, it basically tries to shift more power to the lower house of parliament away from the Senate.
And also to reduce the number of members of parliament. We have almost 1,000, which is not so normal for a country with 60 million people.
And to bring more stability to Italy, because you've got your revolving door governments, haven't you? 60
exactly.
Since 1945 on average, just for a year.
That's
okay,
right.
That may be the case, Minister, but the fact of the matter is we know that Italy is in a pretty dire state. Look at your economy. A large number of your banks are failing to capitalise at all. They are, about 30% of them are really in tough position. You've got 11.5% unemployment, you've got 1.1% GDP growth and colossal public debt. And, voters are angry. So whatever the Constitution is about, they could just see it as a protest vote to give your government a bloody nose.
Well, you have to consider this kind of situation on the basis of what was the situation in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Because yes, you are right, Italy's growth rate is not so high, but we didn't have growth for 3 or 4 years. Our economy was going down, not up. Now, since a couple of years, it is again going up. We are having a lot of reforms, including the labor market.
Sure, you're doing all that.
This is, I think, giving our economy more confidence.
But the fact of the matter is the Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi, has said that if he loses the referendum, he will resign and the whole government will go down with him.
Lose.
You don't know. That's what David Cameron thought in the UK.
I'm confident.
Well, but if he... I mean, why did he take such a high-risk strategy, though, seeing it's backfired for David Cameron in the UK with Brexit, saying, if I lose the referendum, I'm off? Why did he do that?
No, I think it's a kind of message to mobilize our people, but we are absolutely confident that we will win because the constitutional change the parliament decided were awaited in our country since decades. So we have now the opportunity to put them in practice.
All right, but I have to say to you that, that's what you hope, but it may not be the outcome. Marco Protopapa, an economist at JP Morgan in London, says a negative outcome in Italy would herald a new phase of extremely high political uncertainty with a notable absence of major centrist leaders and a rising risk of populist movements taking hold. That is how the Italy domino could actually be triggered, because we know the Populist Party, the Five-Star Movement, is ahead of the Democratic Party in the polls, and they are calling for a referendum on the euro.
Well, yes, you are right. We risk a sort of domino effect in Europe. We risk it because of a British referendum, not because of an Italian referendum. You're mentioning our surveys. Yes, we have surveys every week, and I think that in the last 3 years, 1 week, one single week, the one you are mentioning, so the five-star movement 0.4 points.
It's actually
over us.
0.8.
It's correct.
I mean, Democratic
It's
Party
correct.
29.8, and the five-star 30.6 for
Yes.
opinion polls.
Yes.
Quite different from the start of the year. And also,
1 week in the last
well,
4 years.
listen, they won 19 of the 20 mayoral elections in Italy, including the mayor of Rome
Yes.
and Turin,
And
big
we won
cities.
72. So it's 72
But the mayors.
against 90. If someone has to worry about the future of European economy and European stability, he is perfectly right. But the reason to be worried is that unfortunately we had a referendum in UK and the Remain position lost the referendum. I understand this. Italy is not the problem. We hope to be part of the solution, and it will not be easy, but for sure we are not the problem.
The EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said of Brexit vote, "We must stop interpreting the vote which took place in Britain as a vote that should be shaping policy in Europe." It sounds like you're disagreeing with him. You think that it has had an impact. It's causing people to be a bit nervous in Europe.
Obviously it has had an impact.
So he's wrong. He's wrong.
Juncker, well, maybe if he says this so bluntly, I don't agree with him, because UK is one of the 3 or 4 main European countries. How can we believe that the fact that the majority of UK citizens decided after a very, very long periods, decades of participation to EU, if the majority decides to leave, can you imagine that we, the other 27 member states, believe that this is nothing? It is obvious that it is something very, very serious for Europe and even more serious for UK.
Okay, well, given that your position is different from Mr. Juncker's there, you know there's been quite a bit of criticism about him, unattributed sources, or even some people speaking openly, like the Czech foreign minister saying he's not suitable for the job. What's Italy's position on Mr. Juncker? Well, what's your view of him?
Well, we contributed to his election because there was an agreement between the conservatives and the socialist progressive parties. I think that President Juncker tried to give to EU Commission a role in this complicated situation. But the fact is that the European Commission is still something different from a European government.
So
it has not the legitimacy to represent the European citizens. So we have to go forward in this process.
So when the Prime Minister Matteo Renzi here said that people don't like being lectured by a school teacher in Brussels, they were his exact words, do you think he might have been talking about Jean-Claude Juncker?
No.
But somebody like him?
I don't know, but not about Mr. Juncker.
All right, so after Brexit then, the debate, as you said, is it's a wake-up call in a way, isn't it, for Europe? So the question is now, how does Europe respond? Does it say, oh, well, the major Eurosceptic nation is now, you know, voting to leave the EU. We can either go down more integration, more federalism, or you could say, well, we've seen the degree of Euroscepticism in the UK. We have to heed that and make sure that we understand people's concerns about too much Europe. Which way is it?
Well, my opinion is that the real issue of the debate was not so much, even in UK, as far as I understand, was not so much if we have too much or not too much Europe. It was about 2 or 3 main issues that are now worrying the European citizens. First of all, migration, and number 2, the economic crisis, jobs, and many in our public opinions, and it is clear in UK also, are blaming Europe, Brussels, for these kind of problems. So that is not, I don't think that UK voters...
No, but it's how you respond to it now that I'm asking you, Foreign Minister, because as I said, there are two stark options. And, you know, Italy, the Finance Minister, Paolo Gentiloni, has, for instance, talked about having a common budget, treasury, for Eurozone members, and even an unemployment insurance scheme. Now, that sounds quite integrationist, if you ask me.
Yes, but I don't think that this is the moment to launch a big debate on the architecture of the European Union. I think that our citizens, if after such a serious event as the British referendum, we would react with a debate on European architecture, more integration, less integration, they will consider us a little bit mad. What they are asking to Europe and to the 27 European governments is to solve, or at least to give a contribution to solve, the 2 or 3 main issues.
You just said the 27 EU countries. Have you already taken the United Kingdom out of it?
Oh, it's not my decision. I hope if the UK want to change this decision, I will take a glass of champagne.
Do you think it might happen? Do you think it might happen? I mean, do you think Brexit? Do you think Brexit is definitely going to happen?
Well, for sure, it's not up to the Italian foreign minister to decide.
No, but
what I can say is that in the last 20 years, we saw decisions, referendums in Europe changed by other referendums or even by decisions of the national parliament.
Denmark, for instance, Maastricht Treaty, they voted against, and then another referendum they accepted also. In the 90s. Yeah.
So, but this is obviously to UK citizens and government to decide, not to us.
But do you think that it is a possibility?
So I'm saying 27 because they decided to leave, not because I decided.
But have they left already? Because that's another question. The timing. There are those who say, look, Article 50, you know, that's when you start the breakup, and not before. And until then, the UK is still a fully paid up member of the EU.
It is. But at the same time, I think reasonable what the Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond told me the day after the referendum. He told me, look, Paolo, we have to wait the new leader, the new prime minister, and he has to take this decision.
Or she. The front runner is Theresa May.
He or she has to take the decision, correct. But this cannot mean that we suspend, the Latins use the word ad libitum, forever, the situation for 27 countries and 450 million people.
So you agree with the Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel when he told the Times newspaper, you can't say I want a divorce, but I will live with you for a little while until I make up my mind. You think he's right? Britain's got to leave quickly?
No.
Invoke Article 50?
I think this is up to UK to decide, but the time is when the new UK government leadership will be in place. At this moment, I think we have to begin the process. I repeat, if the decision to leave is not a decision taken, but this is for UK people and government, not for me.
But just to finish off on whether this integration is federalism thing, and you said it's not really the right time to have this debate. It is a debate that's going on. Donald Tusk, the European Council President, himself a Pole, because of course they are on the more Eurosceptic side. And by the way, you know, the Eastern Central European countries have said that they don't want to be kind of stitched up by the big three, Italy, France and Germany, deciding what's going to happen. He has said, increasingly louder are those who question the very principle of a united Europe, and a vision of a federation doesn't seem to me to be the best answer to it. You can't press on with grand schemes anymore in Europe, can you?
I think the grand scheme for us now is 3 words: migration, jobs and economy, security. This is where EU will show its resilience and its future. Then if you ask me about the structure of Europe, I will answer that it is not now that we will discuss this. When we will discuss this, our position is yes, we need more integration, but not, because it is not possible, more integration at 27 or 28, if UK comes back, level. This is not realistic.
Well, just to get that, so it could actually also leave but come back a few years later with your vast experience. You think that's also a possibility?
No, I repeat, it's not.
Okay.
It's not
all
me.
right. So you said migration, jobs and security. The
Yes.
EU has got to answer the concerns of voters. So let's just take migration. First of all, let's look at EU migration, within the EU. And as we know, that was one of the key issues, people coming from other parts of the European Union into the UK. This is one of the main pillars of the European Union. But it's now actually, post-Brexit, being questioned. Even Manuel Valls, the French Prime Minister, has said of this that he is threatening to no longer apply EU laws on workers because EU migrants are undercutting French standards. So there's a concern, isn't there? EU migration and jobs for people in their own country, they feel under threat. You're not delivering.
Absolutely. The intra-EU migration was always a problem in the last 20 years. I personally remember, I'm not a young guy, the threat of the Polish workers when there was the enlargement to the East Europe. Everybody in Italy, but also in France and in other countries, was saying, oh, now we will have an invasion of Polish workers that they will... and then we had the same phenomenon in Italy about Romania. Oh, the Romanians are arriving, etc., etc. I think that we should be realistic and say that after 60 years, we have an extraordinary achievement of the fact that within Europe, a so huge area and the richest area of the world, there is the free circulation of persons. It has disadvantages, but it is the basis also of our economic success. And you cannot have the common unique market having all the privileges and the advantages of a single market and not having the single market of persons.
So do you agree then with Angela Merkel when she's saying within the context of the UK Brexit again that they can't, it's not a, to use her words, cherry-picking exercise on the single market. You say, yes, we'll accept the trade, but not the free movement of labour. You can't.
The same issue that we are discussing since 1 year with Switzerland, one of the most relevant economic partners of EU.
Not a member of the EU,
because
of course, yeah.
Not a member, they had a referendum against the circulation of persons. And this referendum created huge problems with our mechanism of cooperation.
That's the one they had in 2014, and it's still a matter of big dispute.
They are trying to adjust.
But how can you reconcile then? You said we've got to answer voters' needs, jobs, and also on migration, and still just sticking with the intra-EU migration. That's going to be a difficult square for you to circle. Well, because as I've just said, the French are worried, the Brits were obviously worried.
I think that we are very happy in general with the internal freedom of circulation of persons. Right. We are happy of having many UK and France citizens in Rome, in Italy. They are working, they are studying. It's something that makes our societies more rich. London is one of the most admired cities in the world, also because it has 500,000 Italians and Portuguese and Spanish and France. This is London. And it is something that in all the world we envy to UK.
Okay, well, so that's on the intra-EU migration, but another big issue in the EU, both for governments and for voters, of course, is migration from outside the European...
This is much more complicated.
Yeah, from outside the European Union. And again, the EU has failed woefully to do anything about this. We had the Germans in particular pushing for the mandatory refugee policy. The law was passed in September last year. It's not got very far. You've only had a few thousand distributed on the basis of that agreement. You've got Eastern and Central European countries putting up their borders to other EU countries, dealing a blow to Schengen. So clearly the EU is really not addressing, this problem properly.
You are right. You are right. And I think that we Italians are the one that are most affected by this problem directly, because other European countries, especially on the so-called Balkan route, so Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, Serbia, and so on, towards Germany and Austria, were affected by this flow of migration beginning from July, August last year. But we have very significant migration flows coming from Africa since 5 or 6 years.
This flow within EU states.
So you're right.
Your finance minister, Paolo Gentiloni, has warned of a threat of a possible breakdown of Europe's borderless Schengen region. And he says if Schengen fails, this is going to be more destructive than a crisis of the Eurozone. Yet more strain on the EU.
But it is correct, because the issue that it is most destabilizing Europe is exactly migration. Just think to your country. The issue of external migration, not intra-EU migration, was absolutely crucial in the referendum, even if there was not a big flow of non-EU migrants arriving in UK. It was an extraordinary issue in itself, the idea of the world coming towards Europe. So you are right that Brussels, the EU, the member state were not able in these years to tackle the migration phenomenon correctly. Something slowly is changing. I think we have to accelerate, because the situation is now under control in the Aegean Sea, apparently, but we are not sure how long it will last. And we know that the differences between Africa and Europe will remain there for 20 years, not for 2 months.
So you said also that one of the key things that you want to bring is security. You talked about migration, jobs and security. Do you think, Italy has, for instance, talked about a UN peacekeeping force for Libya because to stop people coming, and obviously the terror threat from Islamic State supporters there. But post the Sir John Chilcot inquiry report that we have had in the UK, there's going to be no real appetite in the West, is there, for that kind of intervention to go into messy places?
Well, it depends on how to go there. The mistake we should not repeat, and we did it not only in Iraq, but also in Libya, is to go there without any Libyan ownership, and to leave after having bombed in some way Libya after a couple of months. What we can do is, if the stabilization of Libya is going on, and if the Libyan government is asking for support for training, we can help them. But you can help them, you cannot go there bombing a country and then going back home. This was a mistake that we cannot repeat, and we will not repeat.
Paolo Gentiloni, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hardtalk.
Thank you for the call.